Okay, today we're doing, we're going to begin our unit on conic sections, and we want to talk about circles. What is a circle? A circle is a set of all points on a plane that are equal distance from a fixed point. Do you know what that fixed point is called?
The origin? Question mark. Radius.
No. Yeah, it's the center. It's the center.
That could make sense.
That fixed point. So we've been working with this unit circle, but you got. What do you know about the radius?
It's half the diameter.
Okay, you do. Yeah, you know that. But what about these? Are all radiuses? What are they? They're all the same. So think of all the points. These are all the points that you make that are equal distant. The equal distant part is the radius. So that's how you come up with your circle. Okay? Now, if you took a circle, okay, if we call this point HK, and we pick a point on the circle, which is just a random point called X and Y, if you were to use the distance formula, you guys remember what the distance formula is?
I do.
It's the difference of the x's squared plus the difference of the y squared. You take the square root, and that is the distance, that's your radius.
It doesn't matter if the y's go first, right?
What do you mean if the y's go first?
Okay.
You mean if you put this here? If you put this here? Yes. Ryan, if you put this here? It doesn't matter, but why would you want to do y first?
I don't know, that's how we always run in middle school.
Okay. Alright, so what you have here, when you do this, that's going to be the distance. And now, to get rid of this radical, you would have to square both sides. What you end up having is the formula. This is the standard form for a circle. And so if the center is 0, 0, you end up with this equation. If I put a 0 here and a 0 here, you end up with x squared plus y squared equals r squared. This is the formula for a circle with the center at 0, 0. Well, what happens when the center is not at 0, 0? So look at this one right here. If you saw this equation, and what you're going to look for is two variables, x and y, and they're both square. Now, if you had something like this, if you had an x and a y where only the x was squared, what is this right here? This is a parabola. When you have a y to the first power and an x to the second power, you have a parabola. But when you have both the x and the y squared, and by the way, we're going to get into other conic sections where there's going to be minus signs in between here. But if they're both squared with a plus sign in between, that's an indication that it's going to be either an ellipse or a circle. We'll talk about ellipses tomorrow. But for this problem right here, the center is 0, 0, and the radius is the square root of 16, which is 4. Well, what happens when you have something like this? X minus 3 squared plus y plus 2 squared equals 16. The center is 3 comma negative 2. Now, how did I get 3 negative 2? What's the relationship between this number and this number right here? It's the opposite. Yep. And then 2 is your y value here, and we made it negative 2 for the center. Now, what's the relationship between the radius? It's the square root. Okay? Now, check out this one. Sometimes you're going to see something like this. Well, that's okay. The center is 0, 5, and the radius is 5. Do you understand why 0 is the x value? Because there's no number next to x here. Now, what happens when we take x minus 3 and stretch it out, square it, and y plus 2 and square it? You end up with, you're going to general form. General form looks like this. If you squared x minus 3, you get x squared minus 6x plus 9. If you squared y plus 2 squared, you get y squared plus 4y plus 4. And 16 is that number right there. Then what they do is they reorganize things, so they put the x's and the y's together that are squared, the highest degree first, so x squared plus y squared minus 6x plus 4y equals 3. Where does the 3 come from? Well, if you bring this over, you get, I'm sorry, did that break off? Oh yeah, I'm sorry. 9 plus 4 is 13, and then they subtracted 13 and got 3. Now, when the constant right here is brought to the other side and the problem is set equal to 0, that's general form. So the difference between standard form and general form, standard form you're going to be able to pick out your center and your radius, easy. General form, it's set equal to 0. General form we don't like as much because it's not, if I gave you an equation in general form and asked you what the center is or the radius, you wouldn't know what it is. But you would be able to pick it out quickly from here. So, now, what are you going to do if a problem is not in standard form, it's in general form, and they ask you to graph it? For example, here's one right here. You've got x squared plus y squared minus 6x plus 4y minus 3 equals 0. If I asked you what the center is, or what the radius is, or even to graph this, the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you write it, get this from general form. Right now it's in general form. How do I get this to standard form? I want to get this to standard form. You know how I do it? I have to complete the square twice. Okay? So watch as I do this completing the square business. So what I'm going to do, check out this. What are these two right here?
Numbers.
What do you notice? What's in common?
X.
Okay.
Variable.
And what about these two right here? Those are the y's. And this negative 3 has to go to the other side. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to organize. We're going to write x squared minus 6x plus something. Put a blank. And now let's do the y's. Y squared plus 4y something equals 3. See this negative 3? This is a common mistake. People forget to change the sign when you bring something over. Now how do you complete the square? What is half of negative 6? Take negative 6 and cut it in half. What do you get? And then square it. What do you get?
9.
You're going to add 9 here, and you have to add 9. Whatever you do to one side, you do it to the other, because it's balanced. And to keep it balanced, if you add 9 to one side, you have to add 9 to the other. Okay, what's half of 4?
2.
And now square it. You're going to add 4 to both sides. Okay, now, what do we have here? This is a perfect square trinomial. When I asked you what half of negative 6 was, you said negative 3. That's the number that's going to be in this binomial. Plus factor y squared plus 4y plus 4. And now combine all those. What do you get? 16. So now, guess what? You now have converted this to standard form. I can now tell you what the center is. Anyone know what the center is?
3, negative 2.
Very good. 3, negative 2. And what's the radius?
4.
4. Now, if somebody asked you how to graph this, what would you do? I would put a dot at 3, negative 2. This is simply how you're going to graph a circle. Locate your center, and then your radius we said is 4, so you're going to go 4 up, 4 down, 4 left. So think of north, south, east, west, and then connect your dots. That's it. Good enough. Okay, what's up with this next one? 3x squared plus 3y squared. Yes. You have to pull that 3 out. And now, the other conic section that we're going to talk about is an ellipse tomorrow. With an ellipse, an ellipse is like, it's a circle, but it's distorted. doesn't have a radius, okay? It's distorted, so it's, and we'll talk about this tomorrow, but an ellipse, it looks like, kind of like a football, like that. Where if this was the center, these two will be different than these two. Now, if they were exactly the same, it would be a circle. Now, how do I know the difference between a circle and an ellipse? These two numbers are the same. If these two were different, if one was a 3 and one was, let's say, a 6, it would be an ellipse. But right now, they're the same. So how will I get rid of this 3? Can I just do that right there? Why not? Why can't I just divide those two by 3? So what do? Everything. Like that?
No.
Everything. That's a common mistake. Everything has to be divided by 3. So what do you end up with? Always try to simplify problems, and that it's the same thing, it's just we divided everything by 3. We can do that. Now we're going to organize our x's and y's. So we have these are the two x's, so we have x squared plus 4x plus something. And then our y's, y squared. Now this 6y is going to come over here, becomes negative 6y. And then see this 4, it's going to go on the other side. So I did this all in one shot. Everybody see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, now complete the square. What's half of 4?
2.
Square it, you get 4. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. What's half of negative 6? Negative 3 squared, add 9. Factor. Factor again. And combine. Now can you tell me what the center is?
Negative 2, 3.
Negative 2, 3, and what's the radius?
3, 3.
Very good. Okay, now here's another good problem. What if I don't give you the radius? What if I give you one point that it passes through? Actually, this is the point that it passes through. This is going to be your x and your y, and this is your center. We're going to use the distance formula, or you can go right into, I think this is the easiest. You can use the distance formula to find the radius and then square it. Or what you could do is use the definition of the standard form of a circle, which is this. All you're going to do is plug in, this is your x value, so this goes here. This is your y value. This is your h value, negative 1 goes here, and 3 is your k value. What are we looking for? We're trying to find r squared. Okay, we need that. So let's write this out. So we have negative 4 minus negative 1 plus negative 2 minus negative 3. Okay, let's do the math here. What happens to these? They cancel. You have negative 3 squared, which is 9. These two cancel. You have 1 squared, which is 1. What is r squared? 10. So now when you write your equation, you need this. You need your center. So you're going to write x plus 1 squared plus y plus 3 squared equals the radius squared, which is 10. There's your equation of your circle. Easy?
Yes.
Okay, now what happens when they don't give you the middle point, but they give you 2 endpoints of a circle. Well, we know that this is the diameter of the circle, right? So pretend like you have a circle. Here's your circle. What do we know this middle point is? What's that? What's the middle point?
Center.
That's your center. So do you remember a way to figure out the middle point? What's halfway between here? What's that called? The midpoint. Do you remember how to do that? You add these two up and divide by 2, add these two up and divide by 2. So I have it down here. The midpoint is you add up the 2x's, divide by 2, add up the 2y's, divide by 2. So we find out that the center is 2, 0. 2, 0 is right here. Simply finding the midpoint. Now, I showed you here how to find the radius. I think this is the long way. The radius is, if you look at the distance between these two, and you take half of that, that's your radius. So half of the distance, which is 10 root 2, so if you follow the distance formula, which is the difference of the x's squared plus the difference of the y squared, add them together, take the square root, and end up with root 200, which is 10 root 2. From here to here is 10 root 2. But you have to cut this in half, and you get 5 root 2. That's the radius. So from here to here is 5 root 2. That's your radius. So now that we have the center is 2, 0, you have to square this. How do you square 5 root 2? What is this squared? Anyone know? 50. So 5 times 5 is 25 times 2 is 50. Now, how do you put this together? Well, the center is 2, 0, so it'd be x minus 2 squared plus y squared equals the radius squared. There it is right there. Now there's an easier way, I think, to do this one. I think finding the midpoint is very easy. You add these two up, divide by 2, add these two up, divide by 2. That's easy. So how could we have found this equation easier? I think if you go right here, go to this, you're going to use 2, 0 is your center. So 2 and 0 are your center. And use one of these 2 points as your x and y. So you can use, this is 7, negative 5. So you're going to put 7 here. And negative 5 here. And you will still get, what's this? 5 squared. And what's this? What's r squared? There we go. We still got 50. So you can use what I showed you on the previous page, or you can use the distance formula. I wanted to show you both ways. So that's your notes for today. Here's your assignment. Right here. That's tonight's homework.